Is there any genuine links between dairy consumption, skin issues, and inflammation such as acne, dryness, etc.? If so, how big a role do genetics play? Well, we don't see that amongst the populations like the Maasai. So we can and also Southern Indians, and they're on a sort of a vegetarian type diet. So we don't see it there. So it's more likely the modern diet and the inflammation coming from the seed oils or refined sugars and stuff like that have exacerbated these things. See, traditionally, even the traditional vegetarian diets were dairy heavy. So, that would make sense. Even the I've done actually a Blue Zone one with which I covered this, where Gunnery sort of he's a cardiologist, and he was actually in Loma Linda and actually knew that he actually saw the dietary recommendations from the local hospital was 50% dairy. So the population was encouraged to consume a lot of dairy back in those days, in the 50s and 60s and all that. And because they weren't affected by the guidelines, they had their own sort of, they were pushing, and the rest was coming from eggs and a bit of fish and stuff like that. So most of their diet was 60 to 2/3, calling it a vegetarian diet, it was 60 to 2/3 animal based, really, to be honest. And they weren't having any of these problems. And even the Southern Indians who were vegetarian were consuming tubers, seasonal fruit, and primarily they were consuming, dairy products, because, with very limited, fish and stuff like that, and crustaceans, and they weren't having any of these issues as well. Obviously, modern people are having a lot of issues because we've been taking low doses of antibiotics continuously, and it's called glyphosate. It's actually got a patent in. If you go to the patent office, the US patent office, the European patent office, the Japanese patent office, the Australian patent office, you will find that Monsanto has registered glyphosate as an antibiotic. Most people are completely unaware of that. So people today, most of the foods that they're consuming, the plant foods, they are basically continually giving themselves a low-grade antibiotic. And they wonder why their gut microbiome is completely and utterly deranged. So, microbiome derangements can also cause these. And so, obviously, if there are certain pathogenic bacteria and then you give them certain sugars, even if it's dairy-based, they will take those and actually proliferate and actually start causing problems. So it's not the dairy, it's the deranged gut microbiome that other things in the past dietary approaches caused. So we need to fix the gut microbiome. We can actually re-regulate the gut microbiome by improving our taurine status, doing milk kefirs and other type of fermented things that can help bring back a number of beneficial bacteria and change the gut microbiome composition, and eat more animal-based foods, which increases the bifidobacteria and stuff like that, in comparison to some of the other Prevotella, which is pro-inflammatory. I've actually done, if you look at my myths and falsehoods of veganism, you'll actually see the research showing how the high... Hello?
Yeah, she's gone now. She's going to take Tilly out.
Can't remember what I'll say. Anyway. Okay. So it was the... what was I saying? Get back to it, Harry. Focus. So it's not the actual dairy, it's not the animal food, it's really that state. And I would say fermented foods are important. Fermented foods are, most people, the source of fermented foods that they get are dairy based, like cheese and yogurt and stuff like that. The majority of people, maybe some gherkins and pickled stuff like that, but every population on the planet has had fermented foods. When we've got a pH which is close to 1, that means we were scavenger carnivores before we became high-end predators in our distant past, as evolutionary past. So that pretty much means that those ancestors obviously had consumed a lot of fermented meats and stuff like that. The Inuit usually get fish pieces or some of the blubber from seals and stuff like that, throw it under the snow and actually ferment it, and they'll consume that as their natural probiotic. And a number of populations have done a whole lot of different things. So to say that these fermented foods aren't important, they are, because humans have been doing it for a long time. And there's a lot of things, environmental toxins and many things in our environment, and viruses also that can infect different bacterial strains and actually reduce certain things. We know that the coronaviruses, and we know the recent one, does reduce bifidobacteria quite a bit, which is another problem because it's one of the most anti-inflammatory ones. And so when they are much lower, inflammation can go up. So if you've lost more of those. So how were you protecting yourself? Did you have a good vitamin D status? Were you taking sufficient taurine to protect your immune system from immunosenescence so you could fight off some of these viruses in the early stage and prevent yourself from getting C19? Did you get quite a lot of C19 infections? If you did, you may have more deranged microbiome and less bifidobacteria as a consequence of that. So did you jab yourself? That would definitely do it as well. So there's a lot of things that can actually cause some of these issues. It's not one thing, both things that we've done to ourselves and also both in the past and in recent times. And then, yeah, we can have a lot of these underlying issues. So backtracking, trying to work out what did what. And also there's genetic variability between people, how they respond to all this sort of stuff as well. So it's a bit more complicated in that regard.